Leo Malone stepped into the memorial service for Bumpy Johnson carrying a bag stuffed with $100,000. The stunt he pulled with that money earned him the total submission of every criminal in the city. Section 1. The Fall of the Giant. It was July 12, 1972, the morning the legend of the streets took his last breath. Leo's phone rang at 5:15 a.m., "He's finished." Those two words changed everything. Bumpy Johnson, the undisputed ruler of the underworld, had passed away. A sudden heart failure had claimed him instantly. No final words, no preparation, just a sudden silence. Leo let the receiver fall, sitting motionless on his mattress. His teacher, his leader, and the man who raised him was gone at age 65. For nearly 2 decades, Bumpy had been Leo's world. He had mentored Leo in the art of the hustle, showing him how to navigate a landscape designed to bury men like them. Now, that shield was gone. Leo's partner, Maya, leaned in and asked what happened. When he told her Bumpy was dead, she let out a sharp cry of grief. But Leo's heart was already turning to ice. He was busy doing the math. He knew a truth that hadn't hit the rest of the neighborhood yet: a dead king leaves behind a massive power vacuum. Bumpy's empire was generating $60 million annually through various rackets. Every predator in the city would be at the burial: the Sicilian crews, the Irish gangs, and the syndicates from downtown. They were all ready to tear the city apart to claim the crown. To the rest of the world, Leo was a nobody. They saw him as Bumpy's personal assistant, the guy who parked the cars and ran the mundane chores. To the heavy hitters, he was invisible, a servant who posed no risk. Leo intended to use that mistake to his advantage. He stood up and began putting on his best suit. Maya asked where he was headed so early. "To the vault," Leo replied. "The vault? It's barely dawn, Leo." "I'm pulling out everything we own," he said firmly. By mid-morning, Leo walked out of the First National Bank holding a heavy leather case containing $100,000. In the early 70s, that was a massive fortune, worth nearly $1 million in today's value. It was every single dollar he had scraped together during his 20 years of service. He was about to gamble it all on one move. Every cent he had ever made was now in his possession. Maya sat in the passenger seat of their car, her voice trembling. "Leo, tell me what's going on. This is crazy." "I'm heading to Bumpy's service with $100,000 in my hand," he replied. "You've lost your mind. They'll gun you down and take it before you hit the door." Leo turned to his wife, his eyes cold and focused. "Listen to me. I'm walking into a building filled with the most dangerous men in this city. I'm not going in there as the guy who used to hold Bumpy's umbrella. I'm going in there as a ruler. Just trust me." The service was held at the Grand Cathedral of the Heights, the most massive sanctuary in the district. It was overflowing with thousands of people: crooked politicians, local icons, and people who either worshipped Bumpy or lived in terror of him. However, the first few rows were the most important. They were packed with the heavyweights. Leo spotted them all: Tony, the butcher Moretti from the downtown syndicate, Julian Vane, the ruthless king of the East Side, and the high-ranking captains of the city's most feared families. They sat there in silk suits, shedding fake tears while mentally dividing Bumpy's territory like vultures over a carcass. Leo made sure to arrive late. He stepped through the heavy oak doors wearing a sharp charcoal suit and a matching hat, clutching the leather case. A few people glanced back, whispering, "Isn't that Bumpy's driver? The errand runner?" Then they turned away, dismissing him as a non-factor. But Leo didn't find a seat. He marched right down the center aisle, past the rows of stunned killers, until he reached the open mahogany casket. He placed the briefcase on the floor and flipped the latches. The sound of the clicking metal echoed in the silent room. Leo reached in and grabbed a thick bundle of $100 bills, $10,000, and laid it directly on Bumpy's chest. The whispers stopped instantly. He didn't stop there. He pulled out a second stack and laid it down. Then a third. He kept going until 10 thick bricks of cash, totaling $100,000, were piled high on top of the dead man. The atmosphere in the cathedral turned to ice. 2,000 people held their breath, unable to process the sight of a nobody throwing a fortune into a grave. It was a display of wealth and loyalty that no one in that room had ever seen. Then, Leo did the unthinkable. He didn't walk away. He turned his back on the casket and stared directly at the front rows, directly into the eyes of the most powerful murderers in the country. "My name is Leo Malone," he announced, his voice steady and echoing through the rafters. "For nearly 20 years, I stood by Bumpy Johnson's side," Leo declared. "In all that time, he hammered one lesson into my head. In this world, you are either a giant or you are a shadow. And the only way people recognize a giant is when he makes himself impossible to ignore." Leo waved a hand toward the mahogany coffin and the piles of currency. Bumpy Johnson was a giant. The most powerful man this neighborhood has ever known. When a monarch passes, you don't bury him like a pauper. You give him a send-off fit for a ruler. That is why I am laying down $100,000, because that is the price of true honor. That is what real loyalty looks like. The silence in the cathedral was heavy, but Leo pushed forward. "I can see the gears turning in your heads. Every one of you is wondering who is going to seize the throne. You're already planning how to slice up Bumpy's business. You think it's going to be one of you." He leveled a finger at the syndicate bosses in the front row. "You think the downtown families are going to waltz in here and take what Bumpy spent a lifetime building?" He then turned his gaze to Julian Vane and the local crews. "And you? You think you're next in line just because you've been waiting in the wings?" Leo slowly shook his head. "You're all mistaken. Bumpy didn't leave his legacy to a stranger, and he didn't leave it to a vulture. He left it to me." The room exploded. Men were shouting, and chair legs scraped against the floor as gangsters surged to their feet. Julian Vane screamed over the noise. You're a nobody. You're just the guy who opens the doors." Leo didn't even blink. "I was the man at the door. Today, I am the man in charge. And I know it because I just tossed a fortune into that casket while you all watched. Not a single person in this room has the heart to do what I just did. None of you have that kind of liquid cash to burn, and none of you had enough love for Bumpy to honor him this way." He locked eyes with Tony Moretti. "Your people have been taking a cut from our streets for decades. You take 20% and treat us like your employees. Those days are dead and buried with Bumpy. From this moment on, these streets belong to the people who live on them. If you want to move product here, you come to my office. You ask for my blessing. And you pay me." Moretti's face turned a deep shade of purple. "You've got a lot of nerve, boy. I've got $100,000 in that box that says I've got more than nerve," Leo shot back. "I've got the discipline and the vision that you lack." He turned his attention back to Julian Vane. "And you've been counting the days until Bumpy's heart gave out so you could play king. But you aren't built for this. You want the fame and the bright lights. You want everyone to scream your name. That's exactly how you end up in a body bag or a prison cell. I'm moving differently. I'm going to stay in the shadows, I'm going to play it smart, and I'm going to stack a fortune. In 5 years, when I'm clearing $1 million every single day, you'll regret not bowing down to me this morning." The cathedral was in a complete state of disorder. Arguments broke out in the pews, and the heavy hitters were hurling threats. But Leo Malone didn't flinch. He had already achieved his goal. He had walked into a den of wolves and snatched a crown no one thought he was worthy of wearing. By leaving that $100,000 behind, he had provided the only proof of power that mattered in their world. Leo turned back to Bumpy's body one last time. "Sleep well, Chief. I'm going to make you a legend. I'm taking every lesson you gave me to build a dynasty so massive that half a century from now, the name Leo Malone will still be on everyone's lips." With that, Leo walked out of the sanctuary. Every predator in the room watched him go, trying to decide if they should put a hit out on him or start working for him. Chapter 2: The Fallout. Leo stepped out of the Grand Cathedral and slid into the passenger seat of his car. His fingers were trembling, not out of terror, but from the raw rush of the moment. He had just pulled off the most legendary power play in the history of the streets. He had declared himself the boss in front of thousands of witnesses and looked the Italian syndicates in the eye while doing it. Maya was behind the wheel, staring at him in disbelief. "Leo, what in God's name did you just pull?" "I just took over the city," he said. "Baby, you just invited everyone to your own funeral. The downtown crews are going to hunt you down. The local gangs are going to hunt you down. You've got a target on your back the size of this car." Leo took a long drag of a cigarette. "Maybe so. But they won't strike today. Do you know why? Because of that money." Right now, every one of those killers is asking themselves the same thing. If Leo Malone can just toss away $100 grand like it's pocket change, how much more does he have stashed? Who is backing him? How much power is he really hiding? Maya just shook her head. "You're out of your mind." "No, I'm thinking 10 steps ahead. Bumpy showed me the way. You make a move so fearless that people can't tell if you're a fool or a mastermind. While they're busy debating which one you are, you take over the board." "And if they decide you're a fool?" she asked. "Then I go out as a legend, not as a servant." They drove back to their place in total silence. The second they stepped through the door, the telephone was already screaming. Leo picked up the receiver. "Leo Malone speaking." The voice on the other end was raspy, carrying the heavy weight of the old world mob. "Who is this?" "This is Tony Moretti," the voice replied. Leo felt a chill, but his face remained a mask. Moretti was the acting head of the city's most brutal syndicate. When a man like that calls, it results in either a partnership or a funeral. "I'm listening," Leo said. "Not over these wires. Be at Mario's Bistro at 8 o'clock tonight. Show up by yourself." The line cut to static. Maya watched him hang up, her face pale. "Who was that?" "The syndicate. They want a sit-down." "Are you actually going?" Leo nodded as he reached for his jacket. "I don't have a choice. If I hide, they'll smell the fear. In this game, once they smell fear, you're already in the ground." That evening, Leo walked into Mario's Bistro. It was a small, dimly lit Italian spot with only a handful of tables, but everyone knew it was the unofficial headquarters for the city's bosses. The place had been emptied out for the night. Tony Moretti sat at the center table, flanked by 4 massive guards who looked like they were carved out of granite. Leo pulled out a chair and sat across from him. Moretti stared at him for a long, uncomfortable minute. "You've got grit, kid. I'll hand you that." "I had a good teacher," Leo replied. "Bumpy didn't raise fools. Bumpy was a genius. The jury is still out. You're either a mastermind or you're looking for a quick way to die. We'll see which one it is soon enough." Moretti poured 2 glasses of red wine. "Here is the reality. Bumpy had a deal with us. He managed the neighborhood, we took a 20% cut of the action, and everyone stayed rich and alive. Now he's gone, and you're standing in a church telling me the deal is off. That creates a massive issue." "It's only an issue if you decide to make it one," Leo countered. Moretti's eyes turned cold. "Is that a threat?" "It's a business summary. These streets are mine now. I'm not handing over 20% to anyone. Not anymore. But I'm not looking for a war. I'm not trying to move into your docks or your warehouses. I just want what belongs to me. And what makes you think you can keep those streets without my blessing?" Leo leaned in, his voice dropping to a low, confident tone. "Because I have the loyalty of the people, and you don't. Harlem knows me. They saw me stand by Bumpy for 20 years. They saw me put $100,000 in his grave, because I'm a man of my word. If you try to muscle in, the whole neighborhood will turn into a war zone. They'll burn every building before they let you take a single block. But they'll work with me because I'm one of their own." Moretti took a sip of his wine, considering the point. And that cash, the 100 grand you buried. Where does a driver get that kind of money? I lived like a ghost for 15 years, Leo said. While everyone else was buying gold chains, flashy cars, and expensive suits, I was stacking my pay. I saved every dollar because I knew a day would come when I'd need to buy my freedom. Today was that day. So, you're flat broke now, Moretti remarked. No, Leo corrected. I'm fully invested. There's a big difference. Moretti actually smiled, a rare, dangerous sight. You're sharp, kid. Sharper than the rumors said. Here's how we're going to play this. I'll give you a 6-month window, Moretti said, his voice like grinding gravel. 6 months to show me you can manage those blocks without our hand on your shoulder. If you hold the line, keep the cash flowing, and prevent a riot, we'll recognize your sovereignty. But if you stumble, if the streets turn to chaos or your pockets run dry, we move in, and we take every square inch. Do we have an agreement? Leo didn't hesitate. He reached across the table. Agreement. They shook on it. Leo had bought himself a temporary peace, but he wasn't naive. He knew the syndicate was gambling on his total collapse. They expected him to fold under the pressure, proving that without Bumpy, he was just a ghost in a suit. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Chapter 3: Foundations of a Dynasty. Leo walked out of the bistro into the cool night air. Negotiating with the Italians was the easy part. The real challenge was asserting dominance over a neighborhood that viewed him as a punchline. For 20 years, the local hustlers had seen him as the guy holding Bumpy's briefcase. Now that he was claiming the throne, the streets were laughing. Julian Vane was the first to call his bluff. Less than 72 hours after the burial, Vane marched into one of Leo's main distribution hubs on 155th Street. He looked the workers in the eye and told them the payroll had changed, they worked for him now. He told them the driver was out of gas and the real sharks were hungry. When the news reached Leo, he didn't scream or break furniture. He stayed calm and precise. That evening, Leo drove to Vane's luxury high-rise. He didn't send a message or a crew, he went himself. He walked up to the door and knocked. When Julian opened it, his smug expression vanished instantly. Before Vane could utter a word, Leo had a pistol pressed firmly against the center of his forehead. "You have 2 doors in front of you, Julian," Leo said, his voice a low whisper. "Door number 1, you join my circle. I make you a captain. You get a bigger cut than you've ever seen, you get protection, and you get to be my number 2. We get rich together." Leo's grip on the weapon tightened. "Door number 2, I pull this trigger right here. By tomorrow morning, every corner boy in the city will know exactly what happens to people who forget their place." Vane's breath hitched. "You're making a scene, Leo. You won't do it." "Won't I?" Leo's eyes were like flint. "I just dropped 100 grand into a hole in the ground just to show I could. You really think I'm scared to drop a bullet into a man who's standing in my way?" Vane stared at him, his mind racing. He was looking for a flicker of doubt, a sign that Leo was playing a character. Instead, he heard the heavy metallic click as Leo cocked the hammer. The sound echoed in the hallway. "Make your choice," Leo commanded. "Fine. Fine." Vane stammered, raising his hands. "I'm in. I'll work with you." Leo slowly lowered the gun, but he didn't put it away. "That's the right move, Julian. Because there is something you clearly don't understand yet." "I have no interest in being a celebrity," Leo said coldly. "I don't want my name whispered on every corner. My goal is purely financial. But you crave the spotlight. You want to be a superstar." Leo leaned in closer to Julian. "So, here is the arrangement. You will be the public face, the untouchable kingpin that the papers write about. I will remain in the dark as the silent supplier, the ghost that nobody can find. You take the fame, I take the profits, and we both win." Julian considered it, a slow grin spreading across his face. "That actually sounds like a plan." "It's more than a plan, it's a machine," Leo replied. I have the brains, and you have the bravado. Together, we can't be caught. That night marked a massive shift. Julian Vane became the loud, flashy figurehead of the streets, the man everyone feared and talked about. Meanwhile, Leo Malone operated in total anonymity. No one knew where Leo's product originated, how it moved, or the staggering amount of wealth he was accumulating. He became a shadow in a suit, exactly as he intended. However, Leo faced a major hurdle. The product he bought from the downtown syndicates was overpriced and garbage. The Italians sourced it from European distributors, then sold it to local dealers at a massive markup. Leo was being charged $50,000 for a single kilo that was barely 10% pure. By the time it reached the consumer, it had been diluted so many times it was practically dust. Leo realized he needed to bypass the system entirely. He decided to do something no American distributor had ever attempted: go straight to the dirt where it grew. In 1973, Leo flew across the world to Bangkok, Thailand, and then deep into the jungles of Southeast Asia, the Golden Triangle. He sat down with local producers and negotiated face to face. He cut out every single middleman, the Italians, the Europeans, all of them. Leo secured a legendary deal. He would buy the product directly from the source, 95% pure, for only $4,000 a kilo instead of $50,000. To get it back into the States, he devised a brilliant, grim strategy. He used his connections to hide the shipments inside the false bottoms of caskets carrying fallen soldiers back from the overseas war. The military never searched those boxes. They were considered sacred and off-limits. With a few well-placed bribes to transport officers, Leo created an invisible pipeline. When the first shipment hit the streets of the city, Leo branded it Azure Fire. It was a vibrant blue, and because of its incredible purity, it was like a religious experience for the users compared to the trash they were used to. Leo's Azure Fire was nearly 100% pure. The syndicate's product was 10%. Leo could dilute his product 9 times over, and it would still be stronger than anything else in the country. Because he had eliminated the middlemen, he could sell it for half the price and still make 10 times the profit of his rivals. Within half a year, Leo Malone controlled 80% of the city's trade. He was netting $1 million every 24 hours. He had a staff of 250 people, owned blocks of real estate, and possessed more liquid cash than the entire Italian syndicate combined. And the best part? The bosses had no clue how he'd pulled it off. Tony Moretti called Leo back to Mario's bistro. "How are you pulling this off?" Moretti growled the moment Leo sat down. "Seriously? We've been running this city for half a century, and we can't trace your route. We've got eyes on the docks, the airports, the borders. Nothing. Where is it coming from?" Leo let a small, confident smile play on his lips. "That's because you're thinking like a mobster. I'm thinking like a CEO. You want to know the trick? I don't have associates. I don't have partners. I have staff. Everyone on my payroll receives a flat salary. No one gets a cut of the equity, and no one gets a seat at the table. Since I'm the only one who holds the blueprint, no one has enough leverage to betray me or stage a coup." Moretti leaned back, a look of genuine realization crossing his face. "You've actually surpassed Bumpy." "Bumpy was a master at his craft," Leo replied. "I just modernized the manual. So, what's the next move? Are you going to try and muscle into the other boroughs?" "No," Leo said firmly. "I'm staying right where I am. I'm going to stack my cash and keep a low profile. I have no desire to be the face on the evening news. I don't want to be a legend. I want to be wealthy. There is a massive difference between the two." Moretti nodded. He could respect that kind of discipline. But Leo wasn't being modest, he was being tactical. He knew that expansion was just another word for exposure, and exposure was a death sentence. He had watched Bumpy die with nothing left in the bank, and he'd seen every other king end up in a cage. Leo intended to be the one who actually walked away with the prize. Chapter 4. The Fatal Flaw. For 5 straight years, Leo Malone was a ghost. Between 1970 and 1975, he cleared over $100 million. He purchased apartment complexes, luxury estates in the suburbs, and a fleet of high-end vehicles, yet he remained a shadow. The federal agents knew his name, but they were chasing ghosts. They monitored the traditional smuggling routes and the usual suspects, but Leo's pipeline remained completely undetected. Then, he made the one mistake that every man in power eventually makes. He let his ego speak louder than his logic. It happened on March 8, 1971. It was the night of the biggest sporting event in history, the great heavyweight clash between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier at Madison Square Garden. Every celebrity, politician, and high roller in the country was going to be there. Usually, Leo would have watched from a private room or stayed home entirely. But tonight, he wanted the world to see what $100 million looked like. The arena was a sea of stars. Every major icon, high-ranking politician, and underworld boss in the country had secured a seat for the fight of the century. Usually, Leo Malone was a phantom, but that night, he decided to step into the light. He made a choice that would systematically dismantle everything he had built. He arrived draped in a floor-length chinchilla coat. It was a $50,000 piece of fur that didn't just say he was wealthy, it screamed it. It was loud, flashy, and impossible to miss. Leo sat in the front row with Maya, grinning and soaking in the attention, finally enjoying the status he had earned. But across the ring, a detective named Silas Reed was watching. Silas was a relentless investigator with the Special Narcotics Task Force. For 2 years, he had been chasing rumors of a shadow kingpin named Leo Malone. He had no photos of Leo, no proof of his income, and no idea how he moved his product. But as Silas stared at that $50,000 coat, the puzzle pieces snapped into place. "Nobody buys a coat like that with a paycheck," Silas whispered to his partner. To a trained investigator, that coat was a signed confession. The very next morning, Silas launched a full-scale assault. He tracked Leo's associates, monitored his bank movements, and slowly began to map out the empire. It took 4 grueling years of surveillance, but in 1975, Silas and a team of federal agents smashed through the doors of Leo's mansion in the suburbs. They seized nearly $600,000 in raw cash, ledgers detailing millions in transactions, and enough high-grade product to lock him away forever. As Leo sat in a cold gray holding cell, Bumpy's final warning echoed in his mind. "The second you want the world to see your gold, you're already dead. The ghost survives, the peacock gets plucked." Leo had been a ghost for 5 years and made $100 million. He had built a fortress, then traded it all for a few hours of vanity at a boxing match. He was facing a life sentence with no hope of parole. However, Leo Malone still had one final move on the board. He requested a private meeting with Silas Reed. "I'm ready to talk," Leo said, his voice devoid of its former swagger. "Talk about what?" Silas asked. "Everything. I'll hand you the keys to the entire city. I'll give you the syndicate bosses, the street captains, and every crooked cop on your payroll who's been taking my money. I'll give you the biggest bust in the history of the department. But I want my years reduced." Silas leaned back, stunned by the scale of the offer. "How many names are we talking about?" "Hundreds," Leo replied. "I'll give you everyone." Silas realized this wasn't just a drug bust anymore, it was an earthquake. He agreed to the terms. Leo Malone became the ultimate witness. He took the stand against the powerful syndicates, the dirty detectives of the precinct, and the international smuggling rings he once dominated. His testimony acted like a wrecking ball, leading to over 100 arrests. The city's elite narcotics task force, infamous for its corruption, was dismantled piece by piece because of the information Leo provided. Though he was originally handed a 70-year sentence, his cooperation earned him a massive reduction. He was sentenced to 15 years and walked out a free man in 1982 after serving only 7. But the city he returned to was unrecognizable. The discipline and order of Bumpy's era were gone, replaced by a new, more chaotic wave of violence. The crack era was beginning to bleed the streets dry, and Leo Malone was a relic of a bygone time. He chose to spend his remaining years working with the youth, pleading with them not to follow his path. He eventually became a consultant for a major Hollywood film based on his life, watching a famous actor portray his rise and fall. Leo passed away in 2021 at the age of 88, dying peacefully in his sleep. History still debates whether Leo Malone was a brilliant strategist or a predatory villain. The reality is that he was both. He poisoned neighborhoods and left a trail of destruction in his wake. Yet, he also proved that a man with no resources could outmaneuver the most powerful organizations in the country and rewrite the rules of the underworld. That morning at Bumpy Johnson's memorial wasn't just about grief. The $100,000 he laid on that casket was the ultimate marketing move, an investment in his own myth. Half a century later, people still tell the story of the driver who walked into a cathedral with a briefcase and walked out a monarch. Leo once remarked in his later years, "Bumpy taught me there's no such thing as a part-time boss. You either take the whole world or you stay home. I took it all. I paid the price, but for a moment, I was the one wearing the crown." His life remains a masterclass in the nature of influence. Real strength doesn't need to shout. The second you feel the need to prove you're the most powerful person in the room, you've already surrendered your lead. Leo Malone remained in the shadows for 5 years and became one of the wealthiest figures in criminal history. Then, he decided to get loud, and he lost his kingdom. But there is one detail most people overlook, that $100,000 Leo placed in Bumpy's coffin. He never once regretted it. Years later, while sitting in a prison cell, a fellow inmate asked him, "Do you ever wish you had kept that cash? You could have paid for the best lawyers in the country or taken care of your family for a lifetime." Leo just smiled and shook his head. "No. That money bought me something far more valuable than a legal team. It bought me a reputation. It bought me absolute respect. It bought me a throne. For 5 years, I was the undisputed king of this city. You can't put a price tag on that kind of power." That was the true essence of Leo Malone's life. It wasn't really about the product or the millions, it was about the respect and the heavy price he was willing to pay to secure it. He didn't just break the established rules of the underworld, he threw the rulebook away and wrote his own. Rest in peace, Leo Malone. 1930 to 2021. The man who stepped into a memorial service with a briefcase full of cash and stepped out a ruler. He proved that sometimes the most daring move is the most intelligent one. He also left us with a final, chilling lesson. Staying invisible is much harder than becoming famous, but it is the only thing that keeps you breathing. Leo Malone is gone. But the legend of that funeral, and the story of that $100,000 will be told as long as there are streets to talk about them. The end.